It began as a steady rain. Then within hours the skies opened and Veracruz was swallowed whole. In early October 2025, a tropical low from the Gulf of Mexico unleashed one of the worst floods in Mexico's modern history. Torrential rain pounded the northern cities of Poza Rica, Tuxpan, and Papantla, overflowing rivers and sending entire neighborhoods underwater. By midnight, the Rio Cazón and Rio Tachala had burst their banks, rising more than 5 feet in less than 2 hours. Families fled in darkness as water swept through home, schools, and factories, carrying away cars, power lines, and lives. For tens of thousands, there was no warning, no sirens, no time to prepare. Just the sound of rushing water and the cold realization that nature was in control.
Aquí justamente en la avenida Eloy Cavazos, vean aquí los carros.
By sunrise, the city of Poza Rica was gone. Streets had become rivers, parking lots had turned into lakes, and rooftops peeked out like islands in a brown, swirling sea. Helicopters circled overhead, their floodlights cutting through the storm, searching for survivors waving from rooftops. Families huddled together in the rain, clutching children, pets, and whatever they could carry before the water rose too high. In less than 24 hours, over 12,000 people were forced to evacuate. More than 3,000 homes were destroyed or left uninhabitable. Power lines snapped like twigs, leaving entire towns in darkness. Bridges collapsed, isolating entire villages from the outside world. In the nearby town of Tuxpan, a mother and her 2 children were found lifeless in their home, trapped when the floodwaters rose faster than anyone expected. Rescue teams fought the current, wading through chest-deep water to reach those stranded. Every minute counted. Every decision meant life or death. One rescuer said it best: we weren't fighting the flood. We were fighting time.
Echó a perder todo. Los colchones, los 2 colchones. Nueva y mira, se acabó. El refrigerador, el único que le quedaba, igual lo mismo, ¿no?
Ya habíamos hasta arriba en los cuartos, ahí
y ya no podíamos
ahí
sacar.
tiene la
Night fell over Veracruz, but the darkness brought no calm, only fear. The electricity was gone. The streets were gone. The only thing that moved was the water. In Poza Rica, families climbed to rooftops as the flood swallowed the first floors of their homes. Some escaped through shattered windows, others broke doors open just to breathe. Parents tied their children to plastic containers, hoping they'd float if the house collapsed. Rescue boats struggled against the current, navigating through submerged power lines, overturned cars, and debris-strewn streets. There were moments of terror and moments of unbelievable courage. Local fishermen used their small boats to save neighbors. Students formed human chains to pull the elderly to safety, and strangers became rescuers in a city that no longer existed on the map. Shelters overflowed. Water was scarce. Food was running out. But amid the chaos, people refused to surrender. One volunteer remembered, "No one told us what to do. We just knew if we didn't move fast, someone would die." By dawn, the flood had claimed at least 28 lives, but thousands more were alive because ordinary people became heroes. Meteorologists had warned of rain, but nothing like this. In just 3 days, parts of northern Veracruz were drenched with over 10 inches of rain, the heaviest rainfall in more than a decade. A tropical low-pressure system forming over the Gulf of Mexico collided with a Pacific monsoon trough, trapping massive amounts of moisture over Mexico's eastern coast. The result, an unstoppable conveyor belt of thunderstorms feeding wave after wave of torrential rain. Rivers like the Cazón and Tacala couldn't contain the surge. Water rushed down from the mountains, overwhelming riverbanks, bursting through levees and swallowing entire communities downstream. But this wasn't just bad luck, it was science meeting reality. Ocean temperatures in the Gulf were 2 to 3 degrees warmer than normal, injecting more energy and evaporation into the storm system. Experts say that because of climate change, extreme rainfall events like this are now 50% more frequent across the tropics. This flood wasn't a once-in-a-century event anymore. It was a preview, a warning of what the future could look like in a warming world.
Está grueso el pedo aquí, mijo. Está grueso el pedo. Así se vive una noche de agua. Allá los compañeros también que se les va a meter el agua hasta... Aquí estamos en el arroyo de Santiago en la 1:45 de la tarde.
By the third day, the flood had spread across dozens of towns and Mexico's military went into full emergency mode. The Army activated Plan DN3, its top disaster response protocol. Convoys of armored trucks and amphibious vehicles rolled into Veracruz. Helicopters hovered over rooftops, dropping ropes and food supplies. In Alamo, soldiers airlifted stranded families who had been without communication for nearly 48 hours. In Tuxpan, rescue dogs sniffed through landslide debris in search of missing victims. Laura Velázquez, Mexico's National Civil Protection Chief, announced that more than 12,000 people had been evacuated from the danger zone and warned that rain was still expected through the weekend. "We're racing the clock," she said. "The rivers are still rising." Meanwhile, volunteers across the state stepped up, driving boats, cooking for shelters, and organizing donation drives. Local radio stations broadcasted in emergency mode, guiding survivors to safe zones. But frustration grew as delays and disorganization slowed relief. On social media, Xanxincash, Veracruz, flood trended worldwide with photos of submerged cities and pleas for rescue. Through it all, the people of Veracruz didn't wait for orders, they acted. Because when the water rises, every second becomes survival.
Así está Riberas del Bosque, todos bien asustados.
When the rain finally stopped, Veracruz looked like a war zone. Streets buried in mud, bridges torn apart, homes gutted by water, their walls stained with the high water mark of disaster. Factories that powered Poza Rica's oil industry were crippled. Power lines were down, highways washed away, and the hum of daily life was replaced by silence broken only by the sound of cleanup crews and crying children. Thousands of small businesses lost everything. Shops filled with water merchandise, ruined equipment, destroyed. Farmers reported total crop failure across hundreds of acres while fishing ports lay in ruins from the pounding waves. Hospitals overflowed. Schools turned into shelters. Electricity remained out for days and drinking water became a luxury. The economic losses soared into the hundreds of millions of dollars, but the human cost was immeasurable. Children displaced, families separated, entire neighborhoods erased from the map. And as the sun rose over the wreckage, the question hung heavy in the air. How do you rebuild when the ground beneath you has changed forever?
Está moviendo el refrigerador, mamá. A ver.
The Great Flood of Veracruz was more than a natural disaster. It was a wake-up call. For decades, uncontrolled urban expansion, weak drainage systems, and neglected river defenses had left cities exposed. When the rain came, those weaknesses became catastrophic. Experts warn that if Mexico rebuilds the same way, it will flood the same way. Recovery must mean more than reconstruction, it must mean redesign. That means raising homes above flood zones, reinforcing riverbanks, and developing real-time early warning systems powered by radar and sensors. It means teaching disaster awareness in schools and preparing families before storms strike. And it's not just Mexico's problem. Coastal cities from New Orleans to Miami face the same rising risks where warmer oceans fuel stronger storms and concrete replaces wetlands that once absorbed the rain. But amid the devastation, something powerful emerged: unity. Neighbors became rescuers. Communities rebuilt together. In the darkest hours, the people of Veracruz proved that resilience isn't built by governments, it's built by hearts that refuse to give up.
Hola, muy buenas tardes, amigos de...
As the waters finally receded, Veracruz emerged scarred but still standing. From above, the city looked like a patchwork of mud and ruin, yet beneath the devastation, life pushed forward. Neighbors cleared debris together. Children played in the puddles where streets once ran deep with floodwater. And across the state, the same words echoed, "We survived." But survival alone is not enough. Because the flood of 2025 wasn't a random act of nature, it was a symptom of a planet out of balance. Warmer oceans, heavier rains, and fragile infrastructure turned one storm into a catastrophe. If we don't learn from Veracruz, it will happen again, here, there, everywhere. Resilience begins with awareness, and action begins with you. So if this story moved, you don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because staying informed isn't just about watching the news. It's about standing with those on the front lines and ensuring that when the next storm comes, we're ready.